are module level power electronics going to be part of the solar technology of the future? Now, how does the SolarEdge architecture, how does it stack up to some of the competing systems that are out there? You've got microinverter systems, and it puts consumers on more of an equal footing as far as negotiating their position. They're dealing with the power company as opposed to just here's the rate, you have to pay it. So can you speak a little bit to what is SolarEdge doing to better partner with installers, particularly when it comes to long-term health of the system? All right, welcome back to the Solar Surge podcast. Hey, if you're new to the Solar Surge podcast, on this program, we talk to the top CEOs and the top thought leaders in the solar and energy storage space. And on today's episode, we have John Ahlman joining us. John is the Chief Marketing Officer for North America at SolarEdge. Of course, SolarEdge, the world's largest residential solar inverter manufacturer. And we're going to be talking about the state of the solar industry and how SolarEdge is adapting. So, John, it's really good to see you again. Thanks for coming on the podcast with us.
Joe, great to see you. Thanks for having us, and really looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. So, as we were chatting a little bit before off camera, it's been a very challenging last 18 months or so for the solar industry. A lot of changes on the policy side, a lot of changes on the technology side. And I guess let's go ahead and get into one of the technology questions first, because I think, a question that's out there and a conversation that's going on out there now is, are module level power electronics going to be part of the solar technology of the future? I know so much of what SolarEdge is known for is its DC optimization, module level power electronics. But of course, with Tesla and what they're doing with the Powerwall 3, sort of introducing a new architecture, really an old architecture, but with a new twist by integrating storage and solar inverter into one appliance. So, John, I guess I want to start there. Let's hear it. What's your take on the future of module level power electronics for residential solar?
Yeah, and I think the way we look at it, it's really kind of a two-part question, right? One is the DC coupled architecture, and then MLPE specifically, right? And we're really bullish on both those areas, okay? When you think about DC coupled, for example, now that battery has become such an integral part of the equation, DC coupled, really, it's now more than ever. So I'm reminded, because we're a global company, of course, we fly into countries like you fly into Germany, and there's just sea of solar. It's the kind of sea that we only dream of here. And someday we want all our homes to have a similar kind of thing. And DC coupled has really become the global standard. The efficiency, the round trip efficiency associated with that, we really see now, especially as batteries are almost becoming a must-have to all these systems, right? First of all, we see DC coupled as a key part of that architecture. And then when we get into MLPE, actually, we see this as the other essential part of this, because people are looking to harvest more energy off the roof. They're adding additional panels, they're adding an EV, you name it. So energy consumption's going up, and wattage panels are going up, high wattage panels. So between that, it's all about how can you maximize the harvest, okay? And we believe that MLPE is critical to really optimizing the harvest, okay? And we see that especially because we work so closely with the biggest installers and TPOs in the world, the people who are really vested in making sure that they have maximum energy off the panel, they're MLP pros. They're all on board, okay? So, and they know. They've got the data, they're seeing all the science and the numbers behind MLPE, and they're behind it, and they're behind it more than ever. So we're bullish on MLPE, and we're bullish on DC coupled.
Great. Well, yeah, I mean, as you said, John, now batteries are sort of mainstream part of the solar equation. And, we've been talking about this issue a lot, of course, on the Solar Surge channel. That's probably what a lot of folks know us for is battery reviews and talking about battery storage and solar. You mentioned Germany, so Germany, I would say, is probably a more advanced solar market than the U.S., and they've been without a net metering type of system for a long time, which I think is part of the reason why you see such a high attachment rate of battery storage in Germany and probably in Europe as a whole. Can you tell us, how has SolarEdge repositioned to stay competitive in the post net metering world here in the U.S.? Because this is still a relatively new thing for us. About a year and a half ago, we lost 1-for-1 net metering in California. And of course, California is sort of the trendsetter in terms of solar net metering policy throughout the country. So I think this is the beginning of what will eventually be a nationwide trend. I'm curious, what's your take on it, and how has SolarEdge repositioned to stay competitive in the post-net metering situation?
So obviously, we see batteries as an essential part of the equation in the future. This we can all see now. It's funny. The future is becoming clear. We can see this day where energy is ubiquitous, coming from all these different sources, and that homes all have batteries as part of their equation of success. Okay, so we're very bullish on batteries. We see what's happening in California working its way across the country. However, not necessarily taking the same shape and the same form exactly as California, okay, which we think is a good thing. But we like time of use markets. We know that's where it's going. And as an industry, we need to be able to perform under those conditions. Okay, so we're really building an ecosystem that's going to optimize for those conditions ultimately. Okay, and when it happens, the good news is we think that can be the equation for eventually freedom from the grid, freedom to be independent, ultimately, maybe maximum independence. Okay, so we know that's going to take some time to get there, but if we can, boy, does that open up the world to a whole new frame that we think is very important, and it's where the world is headed. So we're embracing it. Obviously, California, we had our lumps going through that. It was not a simple transition, but we think for the industry, the idea of having an ecosystem that's battery enabled is essential. It is happening across the United States, and we're working at the state levels to make that as efficient as it absolutely can be, because we know that from state to state, you've got different environments. So we're trying to make it as easy as we can for our installers and homeowners to make that transition in that environment, because we all know that's where it's headed.
Yeah, yeah. And I've got to say, I'm particularly very excited to see the technology get to the point where it is today. As a guy that started out doing off-grid solar systems 13 years ago in a very small niche sort of fringe community of emergency preparedness-minded people and homesteaders, to now see the idea of having home solar and batteries and other accessories on that ecosystem is becoming a mainstream reality in California, and pretty soon it's going to be for the rest of the country. So it is really interesting and fulfilling to see that evolution of all of that. But John, you touched on the ecosystem, and that's another trend that we've been talking about, and we've noticed is that it's evolving from just solar and storage as an individual system to more of a whole home energy ecosystem. So tell us more about the SolarEdge home ecosystem. What else is out there on the platform besides just solar and batteries that we've heard about?
Yeah, so I think though you're absolutely right. The importance of this ecosystem is more important than ever. Obviously, a lot of different technologies, whether it's Nest, you name it, a lot of people are talking about various ecosystems. Certainly your iPhone brought the power of an ecosystem and integration, seamless integration, that put it on everyone's mind, because all day long they're moving in and out of their different apps. And so the power of integration can't be underrated. Now, when it comes to a solar PV system, ecosystem it's more than just window dressing. Yes, it's nice when your app, you can control everything from your app. That's fantastic. But we know that when it comes to inverter and battery, the importance of that ecosystem is super important. That's a dance, right? And so how well an inverter is connected seamlessly to a battery or a storage device is critically important, especially in these time of use markets where you're asking it to take advantage of best rates and optimize for homeowners. So this point of ecosystem is truly important when it comes to a PV and storage. That's where it starts, because of how important that dance is back and forth between a battery and an inverter. But then what you're alluding to, which I think is really smart, is all the devices that are going to be incremental to that battery storage, okay? Whether it's the My SolarEdge app, whether it's a load controller that's a seamless part of that equation, whether it's a car charger, and we all know that in the future, the vehicle is going to be a critical part of this component, right? You've got those large storage capacities that are going to seamlessly interact with your home, et cetera, et cetera. So a car charger is also going to become a very important part of the ecosystem. Okay, so, and we're working diligently on our bidirectional car charger to bring that out, working with all kinds of EV companies, no matter what the manufacturer is. So we see that that's an important part of the equation. Certainly heat pumps are another citizen of the ecosystem that's going to coming up, and there's going to be important integrations on AC, et cetera, et cetera. So, we see it as citizens of this ecosystem are going to continue to join. There'll be some that are critically important, like the storage device, like the EV charger. And then there'll be some that it's just nice to have on the app. Okay, so we've got our eye on this ball, and we know that the homeowner, they want it simple. They don't want to have multiple apps. They want to be able to go in and control these various devices. So we've got our eye on that ball, and SolarEdge Home, we're off to a good start on that. So we're really talking a lot about ecosystems, because we think that homeowners that frack out and have like kind of one-off products, ultimately that's not the equation for the future.
I would agree with you. And, I will admit there are many out here in the Solar Surge audience that really do kind of geek out on the technology, and the sort of the engineer side of us might want to be able to pull different components from all these different manufacturers, best of breed here and there. But as you touched on rightly, at the beginning there, if the inverter and the battery can't talk together properly, then the rest of the whole ecosystem falls apart. But there are other participants, or other citizens, I think is the term you use, other citizens in that ecosystem, like your HVAC control, your EV charging control, maybe even a fuel burning generator as a third level backup beyond the battery. And all those things need to be able to communicate together seamlessly, but the battery inverter communication is critical. And I should touch on this though, John, because as one of the guys that was, the first guy selling SolarEdge storage on the East Coast, I should say selling and installing, we ran into a number of issues with those first generation batteries where you had an inverter, let's say from SolarEdge, and you had a battery, let's say from LG, for example, and trying to get those two products to talk to each other, even a little communication glitch throws the whole thing off. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to bring all of that under one brand, one manufacturer, one software platform, if you will, so that all those things can work together seamlessly. And then, of course, from the user experience perspective, you touched on the app as well. It's nice if you don't have to have a different app for each ecosystem citizen, right? I've got one app for my EV, a different app for my battery, a different app for my solar inverter, different app for my smart electrical panel, different app for my smart thermostat. If all of that could eventually migrate onto one platform, I think that's going to make for a much more consistent user experience. So is there anything more you can share with us about the My SolarEdge app and what's available there?
So, obviously we spend a lot of time with homeowners. I'll share with you one story that on the My SolarEdge app that's really kind of powerful and sticks with me. Sometimes I'll watch a husband and a wife walk around, and they'll turn certain devices on within their house, and there'll be one will be really trying to save energy and save money on the bill, and they will talk to each other, and they'll turn on the HVAC, or they'll turn on that dehumidifier or something that's really a heavy consumer of electronics, and then they'll look at each other and says, we're never using that again. So one of the kind of fun applications that we see is homeowners going around and kind of doing their own energy audit on appliances and looking to see which ones are really driving some of these bills, because it's like everything in life, a little bit of that 80-20 rule. They're getting max usage out of relatively a small number of devices. And if they can only change their habits around a few things, they can have a really big positive impact on their bill. So that's kind of an offshoot of how people use the app in unpredictable ways. Okay. But another thing that we like to do, especially, and installers love this one, is we like to give them insight as how at the individual panel level. Okay, so one of the things you can do on the My SolarEdge app is you can actually see your array, and if something's happening specific to an individual panel, okay, you're able to get all that kind of data. So your installer can see it, and so when they have to get up on that roof, perhaps, they know exactly where they have to go. They don't have to take all the panels off to try to isolate where the problem is. Okay, so one of the things we're very proud of is the insight that it not only gives our homeowners, because they can see, and I know your audience is a highly educated and really into the technical specifications of solar, which we love. one of the things that's fun is they can go in and they can really see how their system's performing, and then be able to look at a very granular level, and see if they've got a problem up there. So that's very insightful for the My SolarEdge app to be able to give you a more precise look at your system, whether you're troubleshooting or not. Okay, and then of course we have a lot of new feature sets associated with batteries. Okay, being able to control, for example, if we have a feature that if the weather report senses there's going to be a major weather event where you might need to go back up, it's going to ask you automatically, hey, should we get ready for the storm, as it were? Or you can control certain devices all from that My SolarEdge app to help you use your battery in a better way. Do you want to choose a rate saver option where the battery will go out there and really look at the plan that you're on within your utility and be able to help you navigate to optimize your rate structures? This is the kind of thing that we're really, again, gets back to the importance of how the battery talks to the inverter, talks to the whole system. But that's the kind of feature set that we're bringing into the app that we're super excited about. And people love it's a little bit like sometimes they'll show off the app to us like they're showing off photos, on their phone, and they'll talk about, look, I want to show you, I had a great production month. We love that. We love when people really can have a deeper relationship with their EV and renewable energy and electrification. That to us, we're solar geeks, and that to us is exciting.
Yeah, I've heard it said before, the best solar salesperson out there is a happy homeowner with an app that they can't help but show their neighbors and their coworkers, right?
100%. Let me show you this app, how much energy I produced last month. I had a big month. Those are the conversations. We love homeowners that are proud, that kind of understand. They really understand their system, how much they harvested last month, whether they had a good week or a bad week. This is the kind of relationship, because we know that homeowner is going to tell his friends, going to tell his uncle, because whether you're buying a SolarEdge system or not, the number one thing here is we got to accelerate solar. Like we faster than ever, we got to go there.
Absolutely. So we talked on ecosystem, right? I think we all get this idea now. It's becoming not just solar, but it's a solar and storage and an energy ecosystem for the house with many participants. Now, how does the SolarEdge architecture, how does it stack up to some of the competing systems that are out there? You've got microinverter systems and their sort of architecture, their platform. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier Tesla with the Powerwall platform, essentially taking the inverter and the battery and making it into a single device, DC coupled. How does your architecture stack up to that competitively?
Yeah, and we like to talk about, like, we want everyone to be successful. Okay, whether all the people that you just mentioned, there's the big thing that we're focused on is how can we grow solar in general. Having said that, we're super bullish on our topology and our technology for a variety of reasons, right? And it really does stem back to energy harvest. Okay, so let's break that apart. We talk a lot about string. We know that's making a resurgence. We have all the data that still confirms that, look, a string system, you simply do not get the energy harvest that you do with MLPE. And a lot of people talk about shading. We talk about shading, but we talk about panel mismatch. And what optimizers allow you to do is, it's not just about the fact that if a cloud comes over or a tree comes over, that's only one source of panel mismatch, okay? You've got chimneys, you've got roof obstructions, you have trees that grow, you have dirt that gets on panels because of how the gutter system works within your home. So there's lots of reasons for panels to perform differently, panel mismatch. And that's especially true over the age of a system, okay? How a system performs at year 1, year 5, year 20 is vastly different, okay? And maybe you can control your neighbor and tell him to have his or her tree not grow, but I haven't been successful in that area, okay? So what we're seeing here is consistently up to 10% more energy every year, okay? So over 20 years, we're running models and we're experiencing that in the field. We're seeing the savings from that panel mismatch ranging anywhere from $7,000 under ideal conditions over the life of a system to up to $28,000 $1,000. If you've got lots of shade, if you've got a complex roof structure, for example, with lots of complexity, okay, we're talking big savings. Forget the energy harvest here, but as you translate that into dollars, it's big money. And I'm using those figures compared to today's string, okay, with whatever claims are being made to the changes. That's using Aurora today for today's quote unquote next generation string. So it's big savings. So you brought up another technology that oftentimes we're asked to discuss, and that's microinverters, right? And for that, what we really see is the big kind of factor that we really want homeowners to look at is the fact of today's high wattage panels. And a lot of people will compare it to us like a lot of us can remember when we used to have these window units in our homes, like individual air conditioners for every one of our window units. And at some point, someone said, there's got to be a better way. How about if we had a central air conditioning system that could really be more powerful and more consistent and more effective throughout the whole home? And that really is akin to what we're talking about with microinverters. Okay, you have this with a MLPE SolarEdge optimized system. You got this powerful central inverter and with an optimizer that's not doing the inverter on the roof. So you really get these efficiencies. And I'll close with this on that particular point. When you hook a battery into that equation, now this is where the advantages really start, which we all know it's all going to batteries. When you start to have to convert that power, not one time, but 3 times, you have tons and really substantial losses. So it's the reason why DC coupled has really become this global standard between adding a battery and high wattage panels and smaller, weaker inverters on every panel, not able to keep up with the wattage ratings of these 410, 430, 450 wattage panels. You're leaving energy really on the ground. Okay, so with optimizers, you don't do that. So we really like where we're headed with regard to MLPE, whether it's string or microinverter technology. That's why we're so bullish on optimizers.
Well, John, I have to congratulate you. We've been going for 22 minutes now, and I haven't yet heard you say clipping or triple conversion penalty.
I did that for you, Joe. Joe, I did that for you. I would never mention clipping or triple conversion penalty unless you ask me.
Yeah, well, of course, here at SolarSurge, we try to keep it fair and balanced here, and of course, our audience, out of respect to our audience, they know what's out there because we've been talking about all these different things for years. But I will have to agree with you in my own personal experience when I've designed solar systems and done forecasting using software like Aurora. That's my preferred platform. It does come out to be about a 10% greater energy harvest on SolarEdge optimized systems than on microinverter-based systems, just on projects that I've personally been involved with. That's what the software, that's what the modeling is telling us. Now, you touched on another thing too, which is with time of use optimization. Now, for those that are not so familiar with how time of use electric rates work or electric markets work, can you explain a little bit more about how the battery system, like how you can program the battery system to optimize for you based on different rate schedules, right? Because I know like where you're in Northern California, you've got all different rates, different times of the day. I mean, all the rates are crazy as far as I'm concerned compared to what we pay here on the East Coast. In South Carolina, it's all crazy to me. But, you've got pretty significant difference between, let's say, 5 p.m. in the afternoon versus 3 a.m., in the morning. So can you explain a little bit more how that works, how the battery and the AI work together?
Yeah. So I'll use California as the primary example of that. Obviously, with the time of use situation, or what they call around here NEM 3.0, the power company is looking to make it more advantageous when there's strains on the grid. They're looking for power, okay? And we want to be a participant in that. So they're setting up a rate structure, and we're building algorithms that effectively will take advantage when the utility companies are paying max dollars, okay? So I won't get into the whole thing, but there's highly publicized rate structures where certain times a year at certain times, they are really making it advantageous for you to be able to push power back onto the grid, Okay, so we have built algorithms within a system we call SolarEdge 1, which is kind of the brains, if you will, of the SolarEdge home system. And within that SolarEdge system, there are algorithms that maximize and optimize how the battery will perform. So you can go into the app, you can choose that you want to participate in that. And at that point in time, the processor takes over. Okay. And so what it does is it's effectively preparing the system for when you get maximum rates, when it's aligned to the utility company, but essentially the technology maximum exports during those high rate periods. Okay. So, we're seeing really big savings in particular months where hundreds of dollars can be saved if a battery is set up to perform that way. So we're really working with our installers and our homeowners to make sure that certain features are enabled during that time so that they can really optimize those savings. And it's a little bit like you got to be ready to go. When the utility company says it's time to go, you got to be ready to go. And, and I know that sometimes the utility companies and stuff, they get kind of a bad rap within our industry and against solar and stuff like that. And I think that we need to all take a posture of, instead of having that dialogue, working with them to partner with them for programs like this, okay, and trying to find synergies and how we can all win together on this. We're trying to take a posture of cooperation and let's work together to solve this problem. We know that they've got a lot of very difficult challenges too, whether they're trying to build additional lines across the system or building capacity from the center. We all got big challenges to face. So I think we need to work together on how we're going to solve this.
Yeah, that's well said, John. I can remember, early on in the days of solar, there were so many homeowners that they would kind of adopt this mindset that, hey, I'm going to go solar so I can stick it to the power company. I heard that phrase dozens of times. I'm going to stick it to the power company, not realizing that you're entering a net metering agreement, which is essentially a partnership between you and the power company. Sometimes you buy from them, sometimes they buy from you, but you have to cooperate, right? There is no stick it to the power company. Although I will say that with the advances in battery storage that are available now, I think homeowners are finally getting to a position where they can start taking or leaving the power company on their own terms. If you don't want to pay the high rates during certain hours, you just program your system, don't buy from the power company during those hours. And if the grid goes down, fine, you can run off solar during the day, you run off batteries at night, and the next day the solar panels will recharge the battery for you. So I do think it puts consumers on more of an equal footing as far as negotiating their position, they're dealing with the power company, as opposed to just here's the rate, you have to pay it, you really have no alternative.
I couldn't agree with you more. And obviously, it's funny you say that, because obviously the best situations are when both parties have leverage within a relationship, right? You know what I mean? So I think what you're saying is very smart. And the faster we can add battery storage to this equation where everyone's on more of an equal footing, I think that's when more meaningful progress is going to start to be made. We all know that when you're way out of balance, whether you're in any negotiation, that's always difficult, and bad situations emerge. But we're headed into the environment that you're talking about, where people are going to start to develop very quickly, are going to be able to start to develop options to the grid, okay? Especially as we start to have more cars and EVs into the system, right? All of a sudden, there's going to be a whole bunch of new options, and I think that's going to be healthy for the industry. And who knows, in 5, 10, 15 years, who knows exactly how this is, from distributed power versus centralized power, who knows exactly the way that's going to take shape? They're probably, all the players are going to be there, but I think it's great for solar. The more independent we can get quickly would be best for everyone.
Absolutely. And again, for me, this is very fulfilling to see the technology reaching this level of maturity, because philosophically, this is what I've been trying to achieve for many, many years now, is to get to this point of energy independence, at least at a household level, energy independence, and take them or leave them on your terms. But
yeah. No, Joe, I think your day's coming. I think your day, I think your vision, what you wanted, I can, it's going to take some time still. We're emerging, but between the technology happening with the storage and battery with capacity and such, and wattage panels, I think this is really starting to happen.
It's cool. It's definitely an exciting time to be here participating in the industry. Now, John, while we have a little bit more time, I'd like to pivot a little bit more and talk about manufacturing. One of the trends that we've heard a lot this year is made in USA and domestic content. In light of the Inflation Reduction Act, what is SolarEdge doing in terms of manufacturing? I'm curious, if you're doing any US-based manufacturing, and how are you positioning to best take advantage of the provisions of the IRA?
Yeah, great question. So it's funny, during COVID, for all the manufacturers of PV stuff, everybody, and it's funny, it wasn't just in the solar industry, it was supply chain was an issue around the world, right? We really understood just what a fragile nature manufacturing can be, right, during COVID. So we started to take movement really during that COVID period of how to strengthen our supply side here. And today, I'm happy to inform, and we've been pretty loud and proud with regard to this. We have opened two manufacturers, one in Austin, Texas, and one in Seminole, Florida, outside of Tampa, where we're basically moving manufacturing. Of course, we're going to have other sites around the world, right, to keep that going. But we really do now have a strong presence in North America. And it's great for the IRA. That's great for American jobs. That's from our supply side standpoint. We're no longer have to involve ships. We now involve trucks, and we've got a warehousing system that for us, we are extremely driven by how can we help our installers. Okay, that's kind of our whole DNA is how can we optimize our relationship with installers, and supply side being very consistent, getting them exactly what they need and where they want, because ultimately that's what the homeowner wants, right? The homeowner wants it fast, and the homeowner doesn't want any delays. So what these facilities in Austin and Florida are essentially doing is they have completely changed the dynamic between our supply side. So not only are we able to really get the incentives and the tax credits that the government, rightfully so, was trying to do, but also from how we can service our installers, some amazing things have come out of this. So Florida is operating now. Austin's operating now. In fact, we've got a big event there coming up in a couple of weeks. So we're all about it, and we love how it's benefiting our business on a multitude of fronts.
Great. Well, John, I'm glad you touched on this issue of how do you best support your installers as well, because I think sometimes that's left out of the conversation, especially when you get a bunch of policymakers or a bunch of technical people in a room. We get very excited about what the technology can do. But, it's been a tough past 18 months for residential installation contractors out there. And I think there are many contractors, many of whom probably watching this podcast, that are asking themselves, which is the best manufacturer for me to partner with that I can really bet the long-term reputation and success of my business on? Because a lot of times it's not just getting them the product on day one to install it, but it's what's the post-install support for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Because that's what the homeowner, that's what the end user is expecting is not just to install my system, but to keep it functioning for the entire 20 or 25 years of the warranty term. So can you speak a little bit to what is SolarEdge doing to better partner with installers, particularly when it comes to long-term health of the system?
Yeah, well, great question. I'll build off a little bit about the last question, right? Like in storage, for example, we know today that a lot of installers are facing shortages with certain brands. Okay, and that's a problem because they've got delay of games. They don't need to spend time calling their buddies and their friends within their network to trade products around. Okay, that's the last thing I think they need, right? So one of the things we're doing is we're really making sure that our supply side is consistent. So there'll be products there, they'll be able to get them timely, and they won't have the rug pulled out from them, okay? We also know that sometimes an installer will want to have multiple vendors. Like, for example, we do very well, our storage, like for example, does very well in situations where a homeowner maybe wants to do a panel upgrade and wants to have whole home backup versus a device that just is on or off. Okay, so we for example work with many installers to provide that typical application where a homeowner wants full home backup and they want to make sure that, for example, if they go to bed at night and a storm happens and the battery goes out, they wake up and the house is dead. Okay, so we have the device between our load controller and between the way that we can configure the system. For many installers, we are the full home backup provider. Okay, so that's a very strong use case for us, because a lot of homeowners, they are more sophisticated and they want to be able to go for multi-day outages, and they want to make sure they're really covered. So there's an example of how we're helping an installer with a very specific use case. Supply side is the other side. And I'll close with this. We know that we work with a lot of the sales organizations around across the country, rather. And so one of the things that we're doing is we really work with our installers to make them really be able to present themselves in a powerful way at the kitchen table. So we have folks that are helping them with demonstrations to bring to life that get up to 10% more energy. And what are you going to do with that extra energy? So it's important that homeowners we're not interested in giving them a science class, but we do want to convey some of the advantages of an optimized system over microinverters, over that traditional string. So we work closely with them to really help them in these sales situations be more effective. Because for us, a homeowner that's really educated and really understands the technology, that's where we shine.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So John, as you look out towards the future, new solar technology, what is SolarEdge's vision from the future? Where do you think we're going from here? And where do you see things in, let's say, 3 to 5 years?
So the system that the next generation SolarEdge home ecosystem that we unveiled at RE Plus, really gives a hint to where we think the industry is going, right? We don't think that an inverter seamlessly connected inside a storage device, we don't see that as the path ahead. What we see is more of a Lego type of system that's more modular, where people can add various units of battery storage to their system as their needs grow. Sometimes a homeowner just wants to get started and just wants a smaller storage device to kind of get them through. Other times they want multiple units. So what we showcased at RE Plus last year was more of a modular system that kind of reflects that. So if, for example, there's a problem with the inverter, we don't want to have to take an entire storage unit off the wall. We want to be able to come in and very quickly replace that inverter unit, okay, that high-powered inverter unit that's maximum. We want to be able to get the signal back at HQ, and then we want to be able to very quickly have one person go in and be able to carry the inverter, shake it in, shake it out, okay? So we're really bullish on this modular type of system. Also, I can't tell you how many homes I've been to where you go to install the new system and the configuration is very complex, right? There's a bike rack there. There's a chimney there. There's a outdated there, okay? And so what we also try to do for installers is build a modular system that can be really flexible in terms of how it's configured, right? So you can go into the most complex home and be able to install that system in a variety of different ways. And we think that that's really going to be beneficial to installers. So to answer your immediate question, we think that this type of modular system is the way to go. And next year, we're going to be bringing that in. We'll be delivering that. And so we're excited to see where that's headed.
Yep. One thing just as a former installer that jumps out to me is that I do think we are going to start seeing more complex pricing models for how solar is sold to individual homeowners. For many years, we've had this sort of, red line model or firm fixed price per watt model. But as you start introducing more complexity, like the EV chargers, the batteries, the load controllers, all these different, citizens on the ecosystem, if you will, I do think we are going to see an evolution into more complex pricing models, which frankly should be good for everyone, particularly the installers, which have to manage this additional complexity as well and still stay profitable so that they're in business long term to keep those homeowners serviced. But of course, that's why we have conversations like this. And of course, you in the audience out there watching, hopefully you're getting some good, valuable information about what's changing in the solar industry. John, as we're about to close out here now, is there anything else that the audience should know about what's going on in the solar industry at large or what SolarEdge is doing specifically?
Yeah, I just think this, it's, it's funny when you look at periods with regard to people look into their crystal ball to where, what is the next trend? What's happening? The good news is that electrification has truly taken hold, right? I know that there was a book called Crossing the Chasm that really gets into how new technology is adopted. I know that when it comes to solar or EVs, that we had this period lately where it was a classic crossing the chasm, but I can see that we're about to hockey stick up this in electrification, whether that's EVs or heat pumps, you name it. All these new citizens that are going to come into our electrified world. So we're working hard to enable that because that we want to keep that trend going. And I think this acceleration to renewable energy, obviously what we see happening to our environment every day. We're hoping that more and more people open their eyes to this. Okay, and no matter what the technology is, the key is that everyone who's watching this, have to be an ambassador for renewable energy. Whether it's selling our relatives or friends and neighbors, we got to keep this thing going. So I think that might be a good place we're on a good roll. I think we're coming out of some of the tumultuous times that we had last year, but now's the time to kind of regroup and keep this transformation to clean energy going.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, folks, this has been a discussion with John Ahlman. He's the Chief Marketing Officer for North America at SolarEdge. Again, the number one largest solar inverter manufacturer, at least on the residential side. Are you on number one commercial as well?
We've got quite a few competitors, but commercial is a big area for us, and people love our commercial developers and EPCs. They love not only the harvest, but all the safety implications of that. So commercial, that we got to get solar, just like on our homes. We got to get solar onto those warehouses and car companies, etc. That's the other important part of the game, and that's a big push for us.
That's great. Well, again, really exciting time for the industry. John, I thank you for taking the time to come on and chat with our audience and share what your organization is doing. And of course, folks, that's why we have these podcast interviews is to help you as well as ourselves stay up to date with the latest solar industry and product and technology information. But that pretty much does it for today's podcast episode. I thank you all for spending some more time on the Solar Surge channel. And as always, I'm Joe Ordier here, encouraging you to get prepared and be empowered. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.